If this doesn't pull you in, nothing will. And before I tell you what was inside that backpack, subscribe to Shepherd and Soldier Stories, because some warnings come as gunfire, some come as screams, and some come from a German shepherd who refuses to move away from the truth. Nathan Cole would later say the dog was not guarding the bag at all. The dog was guarding the moment his old life came back for him. The first thing Nathan noticed was the silence. Not peaceful silence. Not the empty rural kind he had moved out here to survive. This was the wrong kind of stillness, the kind that makes the skin at the back of your neck tighten before your brain can explain why. The wind had died. The birds had stopped. Even the half-broken metal sign at the edge of the gravel road had gone quiet. No loose rattle, no tap against the rusted post, nothing. Then the barking started. One sharp bark. Then another. Then a hard, urgent burst that came from the dry creek trail behind the gas station ruins. Nathan lifted his head from the truck hood and froze. He knew that bark. The German shepherd had been haunting the edges of the property for 2 days, never close enough to be called friendly, never far enough to be called gone. Big black antenna male. Scar over the muzzle. Military gait. Too disciplined to be stray. Nathan had left water out twice. The dog had taken the water, never the food, and vanished before sunrise both times. Now he was back. And this time the sound in his voice was different. Nathan dropped the wrench onto the engine block and listened. The bark came again, lower now, followed by a rough growl that rolled across the dirt lot and into the open shell of the old filling station. It wasn't territorial. It wasn't random. It was insistence. "Easy," Nathan muttered, though the word was more for himself than the dog. He wiped his hands on a rag, reached under the driver's seat, and pulled out the old flashlight he kept there with the road flares and the pistol he only touched when sleep came back wrong. The flashlight went in his left hand. The pistol stayed where it was for 1 extra second. Then the dog barked again. Nathan grabbed both. The trail behind the station ran through mesquite, broken fence posts, and waist-high weeds bleached by late summer heat. Beyond that there was nothing for miles except scrub, stone, and a dry wash that twisted toward low hills like a scar through the land. He had come out here because nothing was supposed to happen here. No crowds. No neighbors. No headlines. No uniforms. The sort of place where a man with bad memories could repair engines, keep his head down, and let the world believe he had become smaller than he used to be. Then that bark came again, and the smaller life cracked. Nathan moved fast down the trail. The old damage in his knee complained first. Then his shoulder. Then the deeper ache, the one no doctor ever really fixed, the one made of smoke, radio static, and one failed mission he had never managed to bury no matter how far he drove. He ignored all of it and kept moving. The dog appeared 50 yards ahead on a rise above the wash. He was standing broadside in the pale morning light, one paw planted slightly forward, ears up, body rigid as cut metal. He barked once at Nathan, then turned and looked down the slope. Not ran. Not fled. Looked. Waiting. Nathan slowed. That mattered. A feral dog circles. A scared dog bolts. A trained dog holds a point. The shepherd looked back at him again, gave one short bark, then turned his head toward the wash as if saying finally. Nathan scanned the ridge line before he approached. Habit. Always habit. He took in the thorn brush, the scattered boulders, the dead cottonwood at the bottom of the dry channel, the old tire track that cut across the far bank, and the fact that one of the fence wires near the wash had been pressed down recently. Not broken. Pressed. Somebody had come through here. The dog growled low in his chest and shifted 3 steps to the left. That was when Nathan saw the backpack. It sat in the dirt just below the dog, half on its side, One strap twisted under it, canvas dark with dust and something else. Olive drab. Military style. Expensive stitching. Hard use. Not new. Not old enough to be junk. The shepherd stood over it like a sentry over a body. Nathan stopped 10 feet away. The dog didn't bare his teeth at him. Didn't charge. Didn't retreat. He only planted himself more firmly between Nathan and the bag, then glanced toward the opposite wall of the wash. Nathan followed the look. Fresh slide marks on the dirt. Heel drag. A handprint in the bank where someone had tried to pull themselves up and failed. His pulse changed. He crouched slowly, keeping his eyes moving. "You guarding someone," he said softly. The dog's ears twitched. Not the backpack. Someone. Nathan swept the flashlight beam along the wash even though daylight had already climbed over the ridge. A piece of torn black fabric clung to a branch. A spent water bottle lay crushed near a stone outcrop. There were scuffs all over the dry bed now that he knew how to read them. Fast movement. A struggle maybe. One path cutting down into the wash, another staggering away toward the old service road. Then he saw the blood. Not a pool. Not enough for panic. A smear on a pale rock beside the backpack, dried dark at the edge, fresher where dust hadn't settled over it yet. The dog barked once and snapped his head toward the brush wall on the east side. Nathan's hand went down to the pistol at his thigh. There. A sound. Faint. Mechanical. Like something plastic tapping stone in the wind. But there was no wind. The shepherd's lips lifted just enough to show the front teeth. His eyes stayed locked on the brush. Every muscle in his body seemed pulled tight between attack and restraint. Nathan had seen that exact posture once before in another country, when a military working dog named Vandal had alerted on a dead man who wasn't dead enough yet. He took one step back from the backpack and widened his stance. Nothing moved in the brush. Nothing again. Then the sound came one more time. Tap. Tap. A phone. Somewhere inside the thorn growth, a phone was vibrating against stone. The dog lunged toward the sound and stopped at the end of his own courage, barking hard now, frantic in a way that made Nathan's chest tighten. He wasn't warning Nathan away anymore. He was trying to pull him in faster. Nathan moved. Thorns scraped his jacket and caught at his jeans. Dry branches snapped under his boots. The smell changed as soon as he forced through the brush wall, from dust and sun-baked weeds to shade, metal, and the stale sour scent of fear left too long in closed spaces. He pushed through one more curtain of mesquite and found the hollow. It was deeper than it looked from outside, a hidden dip under the wash bank where roots had knotted into a crude roof and fallen timber had created a partial blind. Somebody had concealed it on purpose. The ground inside was flattened. A tarp lay folded in one corner. 3 empty bottles. A medical wrapper. A broken zip tie. And on the far side, half buried under dust, a phone vibrated again against a rock. Nathan crossed to it and stopped. The lock screen was cracked but still bright enough to show a single incoming message banner again and again as the phone struggled for signal. Run, that was all it said. Just 4 letters. Run. Nathan stared at it. The dog was behind him now, no longer barking, only making that thin vibrating growl deep in his throat. Nathan looked down and saw why. The shepherd wasn't staring at the phone. He was staring at the tarp in the corner. Nathan turned slowly. At first, the tarp looked empty. Then it moved. Not much. A twitch. A breath. The tiniest shift of weight under dust-colored fabric. Nathan brought the pistol up. "Show me your hands." No answer. The tarp moved again, and a weak human voice came from underneath it, cracked with dehydration and pain. "Don't let him open the bag." Nathan froze. The dog barked once, explosive and terrified. Then footsteps sounded above the wash. Nathan's head snapped upward. More than one set of boots. Slow. Careful. The person under the tarp coughed, then whispered, "He came back." The dog moved to the mouth of the hollow, body angled outward now, torn between protecting the hidden stranger and warning Nathan about the people on the rim. A pebble skipped down the bank and landed beside the backpack outside. Then a man's voice drifted into the wash, calm enough to be worse than a shout. "You found my property." Property. The shepherd exploded into barking. Nathan stepped backward until one shoulder touched the rooted wall. Then his flashlight beam caught the backpack's half-open zipper. Inside, beneath a torn map case, he saw the edge of an old photograph. And the face in that photograph was his. The face in that photograph was his. Not close to his. Not reminiscent. His. Nathan didn't understand it at first because the mind protects itself with stupid little delays when reality arrives holding a knife. He only saw details in fragments. The scar under the left eye, the old army haircut, the hard expression he used to wear in photographs when someone told him to look straight at the camera and not like he wanted to leave. Then all of it locked together at once, and something icy moved through his ribs. The barking above the wash stopped. That silence was worse. Nathan kept the pistol up with his right hand and reached toward the backpack with his left, moving carefully, eyes never leaving the slope where the boots had paused. The shepherd stayed planted at the mouth of the hollow, head low, shoulders square, watching the rim and growling so deeply the sound seemed to come from the earth itself. "Don't!" the voice under the tarp whispered. Nathan ignored him. He hooked 2 fingers into the torn zipper gap and pulled the pack closer across the dust. It was heavier than he expected. Dense. Purposeful. He flipped the top flap open just enough to look inside. The old photograph lay on top of a stack of items wrapped in a clear weatherproof sleeve. Under it sat a phone battery, 2 road flares, a folded map marked in red grease pencil, a compact trauma kit, and a sealed envelope with one word written across it in block letters. Coal? Nathan stared down at it, while the air inside the hollow seemed to thin. Above him, someone moved on the rim. A boot scraped stone. Then another. The man outside spoke again. "You don't want to know what's in there, Nate." No one had called him Nate in years. Not since the team. Not since the mission that turned his name into something he no longer liked hearing from anyone who remembered what he used to be. Nathan's mouth went dry. "Then you shouldn't have left it where I could find it." The dog snapped a bark toward the rim. No answer came for 2 full seconds. Then the man up there laughed once, low and humorless. "I didn't leave it for you," he said. "I left it for the dog." The German shepherd's hackles rose so sharply they changed the whole shape of his back. Nathan shifted his footing, angled his pistol higher, and used his thumb to break the seal on the envelope. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper and a metallic object that clinked softly against his knuckles as it fell into his palm. Dog tags. Old. Scratched. Worn thin where fingers had rubbed them too often. He knew they were his before he turned them over. Nathan Colby POS in Orel Pref. The tags had gone missing the night his convoy was hit overseas. He had always assumed they burned with the vehicle. Yet here they were, cold in his hand, inside a backpack being guarded by a military dog. He unfolded the paper. Only one sentence. "If the shepherd finds you first, do exactly what he tells you." Nathan stared at the line, then at the dog, then back at the page. His first reaction wasn't belief. It was anger. Because whoever had arranged this knew too much. Not just his name. Not just his old unit habits. They knew the fastest way to break past his caution was not to threaten him. It was to hand him proof that someone had been inside the locked room of his past. The tarp behind him shifted again. Nathan turned the pistol slightly without dropping the paper. "Who are you?" The answer came slow, pain scraping every word. Not the one you should be aiming at. Wrong answer. Then ask the right question. Nathan hated that instantly. Outside on the rim, gravel rolled. More than one person shifting positions. The old reflexes in Nathan's body began to wake all the way now. Count voices, track movement, mark exits, calculate cover, trust the dog. The last one came hardest. He looked at the shepherd. The dog had not once tried to flee. Not once tried to eat from the pack or tear it open. He was guarding it the same way trained dogs guard evidence or a downed handler. Not curiosity, not food drive, but duty. Nathan lowered the paper and said quietly, "What's his name?" The man under the tarp didn't answer. Nathan felt foolish the second the question left his mouth. But the dog reacted. One ear twitched back toward him. Nathan tried again. "What do they call him?" A pause. Then, "Atlas." The shepherd turned his head halfway toward Nathan for the first time. Atlas. Not a random stray. Not a nameless animal. A working dog with a real name and a real past. Nathan let that settle in him, then went back to the bag. The map came next. He unfolded it over one knee and felt his skin tighten again. It was a county survey map, old but marked recently in thick red strokes. 3 locations had been circled: the gas station ruins, a dry reservoir west of the highway, and a patch of empty government land near the foothills that Nathan knew had been fenced off since spring with erosion testing, signs no one believed. Lines connected all 3 circles. Coordinates ran along the margins. ×2. And in the lower corner one note had been written small and fast. Transfer window move / use coal only if gate fails. Nathan read that twice. Transfer. Gate. Use coal. The man above the wash must have been watching him read because his voice changed. It lost the faint amusement and went flat. Put the bag down and step away from it. Nathan did not move. Last chance. The dog barked once, violent and sharp. The hidden man behind Nathan whispered, "He's stalling for the flank." Nathan spun just enough to sweep the brush line on the east side, and caught movement there, a shoulder in tan canvas, half a face behind scrub, a compact rifle coming up from low ready. Nathan fired. The shot blew dirt and thorn branches across the wash wall. The hidden shooter dropped back with a curse. The rim above erupted at once, boots pounding, one man shifting left, another yelling to move now. Atlas lunged up the bank in a black and tan blur and hit the first figure coming down before Nathan could even get a second shot off. The hollow turned into chaos. Nathan grabbed the backpack, kicked backward into deeper cover, and dropped beside the tarp-covered stranger as bullets chewed bark off the roots above them. Dust filled the pocket under the bank. The dog snarled like something tearing itself out of a cage. Nathan slammed his shoulder against the hidden stranger and shouted, "Can you move?" "Some." "That's not enough." "It'll have to be." Nathan hooked the edge of the tarp and yanked it clear. The man underneath was older than he expected, maybe late 40s. Beard grown in gray and dark. Cheekbones split. Shirt soaked through under the ribs. One hand clamped to his side, the other empty, and raised just enough to show he wasn't reaching for a weapon. Then Nathan saw the tattoo at the base of the man's throat. A faded black trident. Seal. His pulse stumbled. Not because of the ink alone. Because of the face under the blood and dirt. He knew this man too. Not well. Not personally. But enough to drag a name up from years he had spent trying not to revisit. "Mercer," Nathan said. The wounded man's eyes lifted. Not confused. Not surprised. Just tired. "You took your time." Nathan almost laughed from the sheer insanity of it. 3 rounds cracked through the root wall above them. Dirt rained into his hair. Atlas slammed back into the hollow entrance, chest heaving, one ear torn open and blood slicking the fur along his neck. He wheeled toward Nathan, then back toward the shooters outside, then barked furiously at the rear wall of the hollow itself. Nathan frowned. There was no exit there. Only roots and packed dirt. Atlas barked again and began clawing at the bank. Mercer saw it and forced himself higher on one elbow. He remembers. Nathan kept his pistol trained toward the wash opening. Remembers what? Mercer coughed, grimaced, and said the one thing guaranteed to make the whole world tilt a few more degrees off center. The tunnel you and I used to crawl through when we were trying to stay alive. Nathan stared at him. Outside, someone shouted, He's still in the pocket. Flush it. Atlas dug harder. Dirt sprayed. A dark seam appeared beneath the roots. Nathan's breathing changed. He had never been in this wash before. Never in this hollow. Never with this dog. Never with this man. And yet at the sight of that seam in the earth, a memory flashed so fast it felt like a muzzle flare behind his eyes. Darkness, wet clay, a dog moving ahead in a low tunnel, someone behind him whispering, Keep going, Cole, keep going. He nearly dropped the gun. Mercer saw his face and gave a thin, broken smile that held no humor at all. Yeah, he said. That look means you're starting to remember. Then Nathan heard the metallic clink of something rolling down into the hollow. Not a casing. A grenade. The grenade hit a root, bounced once, and rolled into the hollow until it stopped against Nathan's boot. Then training tore through him. Nathan dropped the backpack, grabbed Mercer by the front of the shirt, and threw both of them sideways toward the seam Atlas had clawed open in the dirt wall. The wounded man cried out as his injured side slammed the bank, but Nathan never let go. He shoved Mercer headfirst through the half-open gap just as Atlas launched off the wash floor and disappeared into the hole ahead of him. The grenade detonated. The blast hit the hollow like a shovel full of fire. Roots snapped. Dirt turned to smoke. Nathan felt heat punch across his back, and the whole pocket cave inward behind him as he drove through the tunnel opening after the dog. Dry earth collapsed around his shoulders. Dust filled his mouth. Sound vanished in one brutal white instant. Then gravity changed. The narrow crawl space sloped harder than expected. Nathan slid on one shoulder through loose dirt and old timber fragments, bounced off a buried support board, and crashed into Mercer in a cramped chamber just wide enough for the three of them to breathe. Above them, the hollow caved in. The entrance vanished under a roar of dirt and shattered roots. Darkness swallowed everything. Nathan lay there coughing blind, one hand locked around the pistol, the other still twisted in Mercer's torn shirt. Atlas was somewhere close. He could hear the dogs breathing, fast and rough, and the frantic scrape of claws as the shepherd turned twice in the black, checking first Nathan, then Mercer, then the block entrance. Every breath tasted like soil and old rot. He found the flashlight by touch, thumbed it on, and winced as a weak cone of yellow cut through the dust storm hanging in the chamber. The space was old. Not a random animal burrow. Not fresh dig work. An actual tunnel room. The ceiling was low enough that Nathan had to stay on one knee. Timber braces, blackened with age, held the dirt overhead. Rusted drainage pipe ran along one wall. On the ground lay two empty ammo crates, a snap-field shovel, and the remains of an old lantern station. Mercer rolled onto his back and clenched his teeth against the pain in his side. Nathan swung the beam down. The wound under Mercer's ribs was worse than it had looked in the hollow. Not arterial, not yet, but deep enough that the shirt had glued itself to the flesh beneath. He needed pressure, cleaning, stitches, and a place not currently buried under hostile boots. Nathan looked around, found the drop trauma kit still attached to the backpack strapped by one torn cord, and dragged it close. Mercer gave a dry laugh. Still move toward gunfire first. Nathan ripped the kit open. Still talk too much while bleeding. Atlas barked once, sharp and warning, toward the tunnel mouth that continued deeper into darkness beyond the small chamber. Not back toward the collapsed entrance. Forward. Nathan stopped. The dog's ears were pricked toward the black passage, not the dirt wall where the grenade had sealed them in. His whole body had gone tense again, but this was not the same alert he had given for the men above. This was recognition. Nathan pressed gauze to Mercer's side and tied it off hard. Mercer cursed, then caught Nathan's wrist before he could pull away. Listen to me carefully. Nathan held his stare. Mercer's eyes were gray, bloodshot, and too awake for a man losing that much blood. The men outside aren't just looking for the bag. I figured that out. They're looking for what's under this wash. Nathan's jaw tightened. Then start explaining. Mercer looked at Atlas first. The dog had moved to the mouth of the deeper passage now, standing half inside shadow, head low, watching them with a strange urgency that kept tugging at Nathan's nerves. Mercer swallowed. There was a transfer route here once. Nathan frowned. Once? For movement between the old training annex and the ridge compound. Nathan stared at him. No recognition came with the words. Only anger. There's no training annex out here. There is if you bury it. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Above them, faint and muffled, one of the men shouted something through the collapsed soil. Another voice answered farther off. They were moving around the wash now, maybe probing the slide, maybe trying to find another way down. Nathan lowered his voice instinctively. Who are they? Mercer shut his eyes for one beat too long. What's left? What does that mean? It means some programs don't end when budgets do. Nathan had heard variations of that sentence before, usually from drunks in veteran bars or men who wanted their paranoia to sound patriotic. But Mercer didn't say it like a conspiracy addict. He said it like a witness. Nathan looked at the backpack. The photograph still lay half out of the main pocket. His own face stared back from a younger year he had spent trying not to remember. Under it, the map with the 3 red circles weighted like a coiled wire. He pulled the photo free and brought it to the light. He and 2 other men in desert camouflage. One kneeling. One standing behind. One half turned like he hated cameras. Nathan. Mercer. And a third man whose face had been crudely scratched out with a knife. Nathan's pulse kicked. He turned the photo over. A date. A location code. And handwriting in blue ink across the back. If Cole survives Gate 2, do not return him to handle a line. The chamber went silent around that sentence. Even Mercer stopped breathing for a second. Nathan turned the card toward him. What the hell is Gate 2? Mercer's face hardened. Atlas whined softly. Then Mercer said, You? Nathan did not move. Mercer went on before he could interrupt. Not just your unit. Not just your service file. You? Your responses. Your pair bond potential. Your memory retention under stress. Gate 1 was selection. Gate 2 was survival after separation. Nathan actually laughed at that, a short, ugly sound. You're telling me I was in some kind of test? I'm telling you, you weren't supposed to remember enough to ask. Something in the chamber shifted, because that line hit somewhere already cracked. A flash moved through Nathan's mind too quick to be called memory. A concrete kennel lane, a younger dog pressing against chain link, a voice on a speaker saying subject Cole observe reaction, and then smoke, heat, and his own small hands reaching through bars. It vanished so fast he almost dropped the photograph. Mercer saw his face change. You're getting fragments back. Nathan shoved the photo into his jacket. No. I'm getting angry. Good. Stay there. Atlas barked again from the deeper tunnel, harder now, then spun and scratched once at the earth floor near the passage wall. Not random scratching. Directed. The same way he had indicated the backpack. Nathan rose and swept the flashlight to where the dog had marked. At first, he saw only dirt and old boards. Then the beam caught metal. A narrow square hatch set flush into the tunnel floor under a layer of packed dust. It had a recessed pull ring and a faded black stencil nearly worn away by time. K-Transit B. Nathan stared. Mercer pulled himself up against the timber brace with visible effort. "That's your answer." Nathan crouched and brushed dirt off the hatch. "My answer to what?" "Why the men outside came back now." Nathan hooked a finger under the ring and tested it. Locked. "Then tell me." Mercer looked at the tunnel behind the hatch, then at Atlas, then back at Nathan. "Because something moved through here last night that shouldn't exist anymore." Nathan kept his voice flat. "Who?" Mercer nodded toward the backpack. "The owner." Nathan frowned. "The owner's dead?" "No, then why leave the bag?" Mercer's mouth tightened. "Because he knew the dog would bring it to the right one." Nathan looked at Atlas again. The shepherd stood silent and watchful, only waiting with the patience of a trained animal who had completed step one and expected the human to stop lagging behind. Nathan's hand tightened around the flashlight. "I don't know this dog." Mercer answered immediately. "He knows you." No one spoke after that. Only dust falling. Only the faint shouts above. Only Atlas breathing in the dark. Then, from somewhere beyond the blocked tunnel wall behind them, came the grinding metallic shriek of machinery engaging. Nathan's head snapped up. Mercer went pale. "That's not possible," he whispered. The hatch ring under Nathan's hand vibrated once. Then a red line of light appeared in the seam around the floor plate. Atlas exploded into barking. Nathan jerked back just as the hidden hatch unlocked from below with a heavy mechanical clack. And voices started rising from under the floor. The voices under the floor rose through the steel hatch, muffled at first, then sharper, as the hidden lock finished cycling below. Nathan stepped back and brought the pistol up. Atlas did not retreat. The shepherd stood over the glowing seam, barking in short violent bursts that echoed through the chamber. Mercer pushed himself upright against the timber brace and went pale. "Don't shoot unless I say," Mercer whispered. Nathan didn't take his eyes off the hatch. "That depends on who comes through it." Mercer swallowed once. "If it's the surface team, they won't use the transit lock." The hatch clacked again. A wheel turned somewhere below. Then a bolt retracted. Then a female voice came up through the gap. "Mercer? Answer now." Mercer dragged in a breath. "Still alive." Silence. Then the woman below said, "Code." Mercer shut his eyes. "Gray Lantern. South Breach." A beat. Then, "Counter." Mercer's voice cracked. "Atlas first." Nathan felt the world tilt. Atlas stopped barking. The sound cut mid-burst, like the dog had recognized something in the voice below that overruled rage. He stood trembling over the hatch seam, ears forward now, tail low but no longer rigid. Nathan looked from the dog to Mercer, and felt the same ugly certainty he had felt when he saw his own face in the backpack. This had been arranged around him long before he arrived. The voice returned. "Open your hand, Mercer. Slide it through the seam." Mercer obeyed. Nathan almost stopped him. Instead, he watched as the wounded man pressed his palm flat to the metal just as the hatch lifted a fraction on hidden pistons. A narrow bar of red light cut into the chamber. Someone underneath looked through the opening. Nathan heard a small inhale. Then the voice changed. Not fear. Recognition. "He's really here," she whispered. Nathan's pistol shifted lower by reflex before he forced it back up. "Who?" No answer. The hatch rose 3 more inches. Fingers appeared under the edge from below. They hooked the lip and pushed while a second mechanism engaged somewhere under the floor. Dust shook off the braces overhead. Atlas stepped back just enough to avoid the opening, then whined once and stared down into the red-lit gap like he had been waiting on a door this entire time. The hatch folded up on hidden hinges. A ladder dropped below into a narrow shaft lit by emergency strips. And on the ladder stood not a strike operator or a soldier, but a young woman barely out of her 20s, with a compact pistol in one hand, a headlamp over dark hair, and a medic's bag slung across one shoulder. Dirt streaked her face. Her eyes hit Mercer first, then Atlas, then Nathan. When she saw Nathan, all the practiced hardness in her expression cracked for one beat. "Cole," she said. Nathan's finger tightened on the trigger. "How do you know that name?" "Because we were told if the dog ever brought the bag to anyone, it would be you." She looked past him immediately, scanning the collapsed chamber. "No time. They'll bring thermal and cut charges to the wash in minutes. You either come down now or die under the dirt." Mercer didn't wait for Nathan to decide. He hauled himself toward the shaft and nearly fell. Nathan caught him before his head hit the hatch rim. The woman on the ladder swore. "He needs pressure and clotting now." Nathan held Mercer upright with one hand and kept the pistol in the other. "You still haven't told me who you are." The woman's jaw flexed once. "June. Last name. Not useful." Atlas barked sharply at the blocked chamber entrance. Above them, faint through the collapsed soil, something heavy struck the earth outside. June heard it too. Her eyes snapped upward. "Choose Nathan." He stared down the shaft. Below the ladder was an old utility passage running left and right under the wash. Emergency lights pulsed along one wall. A short rail cart sat on a recessed track beside water jugs and fuel cans. On the near wall, half obscured by rust and dust, old black stencil lettering still showed through. Annex South/K Transit. Nathan looked at Mercer. "Training Annex." Mercer gave the smallest nod. Nathan shoved the pistol into his belt, slung Mercer's arm over his own shoulder, grabbed the backpack with his free hand, and started down the ladder. Atlas went first. June climbed backward beneath him, guiding Mercer's boots when his strength failed. Dirt sifted from the shaft above with every distant impact from the wash. By the time Nathan hit the concrete floor, his pulse had become a hard, steady drum. June took Mercer from him and hustled the wounded man onto the cart bench. She cut the shirt, packed the wound tighter, injected something into his thigh, then nodded once, like she had bought him time and nothing more. Atlas pressed against Nathan's left leg, then moved in a tight circle and faced the northbound tunnel. Guarding. Waiting. June zipped the medic kit closed. "Did you open the envelope?" "Yes." "The map too?" "Yes." "Then you know enough to understand this isn't random." Nathan laughed once, no humor. "No. I know enough to understand somebody's been building a maze out of my life." Mercer's breathing had evened a little, but his face had gone waxy. He lifted his eyes toward June. "Was he moved?" Her silence was answer enough. Nathan caught it. "Who?" June wiped blood from her knuckles on her pants and said, "The owner of the backpack." Nathan's grip tightened around the bag strap. "That's why I'm here." "No," Mercer muttered. "That's why Atlas went for you." Nathan turned. "Then whose bag is it?" Mercer looked at him with something so close to pity Nathan wanted to hit him. "You already know." Nathan did not. And yet his body had started bracing anyway. June reached into the outer pocket of the backpack and pulled out a second item Nathan hadn't seen. A folded black cloth patch, half burned at one edge. She handed it over. He unfolded it slowly. Team insignia. Old. Sun-faded. One stitched call sign still intact under the ash and fray. Rusk, the tunnel seemed to drop away under him. Owen Rusk. Nathan saw the name and went somewhere else instantly. Heat, rotor wash, burning metal, the convoy split by fire, Owen shouting at him over the radio to keep moving, and then the vehicle flipping in smoke so violent Nathan had never managed to decide which part of that memory was real and which part was guilt. "Owen died," he said. June looked at him for a long time before answering. "That's what they filed," Atlas whined. Mercer tipped his head back against the cart rail. "He didn't make the ridge extraction. They took him below instead." Nathan's mouth dried out. "No, he carried the bag out last night," June said. "Not because he could run. Because he knew Atlas would finish what he couldn't." Nathan stared at the patch in his hand until the letters blurred. Above them, a dull thump echoed through the shaft. Then another. Then a metallic whine. Cutting tools. Surface team. Closing. June stood. "You can keep denying it while they burn the tunnel out from above, or you can come see him." Nathan looked at Mercer. "You're both telling me a man I watched die is alive under this wash." "No," Mercer said softly. "I'm telling you a man they needed dead on paper is waiting 2 corridors from here and running out of time." That line got through. Nathan lifted his head. "Take me." June didn't waste a second. She shoved the railcar brake loose, and the small platform rolled north along the track. Mercer stayed on the bench, jaw clenched, one hand pressing his bandage. Nathan walked beside the cart with the backpack on one shoulder and the flashlight in hand. Atlas trotted ahead in the pulsing red light. The tunnel branched twice. At the first split, the left corridor had collapsed. At the second, a steel security door hung ajar. Nathan swept the beam over the wall beside it and found faded unit markings and something that looked horribly like old canine station numbers scratched into painted cinderblock. Atlas slowed there. He touched his nose to one dark square painted on the wall, then moved on. Nathan felt that in his chest in a way he could not explain. "Don't stop," June said. "Not here." "Why?" Her voice tightened. "Because this was one of the pairing lanes." Nathan's mind flashed again. Chain link. Puppy breath. A speaker voice. His own small hand against wire. He nearly stumbled. The cart rounded one more corner and entered a wider chamber. Portable lamps cast hard white light over cots, bins, maps, and dead monitors. Somebody had turned it into a field station in a hurry. And on the far cot, under a gray blanket darkened with blood, lay a bearded man with oxygen tubing under his nose and one arm wrapped to the elbow in fresh bandage. Nathan stopped walking. He knew the shape before the face. Owen Rusk opened his eyes at the sound of Atlas's claws on concrete. Those eyes found the dog first. Then Nathan. For a second, nobody in the room breathed. Then Owen, who Nathan had buried in his mind 100 times, smiled with one corner of his mouth through split lips, and said, almost gently, "You were never supposed to remember the dog before me." Owen Rusk's smile barely lifted one corner of his mouth. "You were never supposed to remember the dog before me." Nathan stood so still even the dust seemed to move around him instead of on him. Atlas crossed the chamber first. The shepherd did not rush. He went in a slow, deliberate line to the cot, ears forward, nose working, body taut with something far more complicated than simple reunion. When he reached Owen, he pressed his muzzle once against the man's wrapped forearm, then lifted his head and looked back at Nathan. Not random. Not confused. An introduction. Nathan felt anger rise, because anger was easier than the other thing trying to happen. "Owen died," he said. Mercer shifted on the rail cart, one hand clamped over his bandage. June looked from Nathan to Owen and back like she already knew what the next 30 seconds would cost. Owen let out a breath that sounded like it hurt. "That's what they needed you to believe." Nathan took 2 steps forward. I watched that convoy burn. You watched the road burn. No. Nathan's jaw tightened. I watched you go over in the second vehicle. Owen's eyes held on him, steady despite the pain floating under them. And after that? Nathan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because after that was always where the memory became smoke. Fire, radio static, the wheel in his hands, Atlas. No, not Atlas then. There had been another call sign on the manifest, another handler assignment, and then a wall. A blank cut into the reel. June saw it happen on his face. She moved to the field table, unrolled a stained map, and spoke without softness. You can argue over what he remembers after we get out, or you can listen while there's still time to use the bag. Nathan turned on her. You keep saying use it. For what? For what Owen dragged it out here to do. Mercer coughed into his fist. He didn't carry that weight through a transfer shaft because he missed your company. Atlas barked once at the tunnel behind them. All 4 humans looked that way instantly. The sound above the ceiling had changed. No more distant probing. Now it was a rhythmic metallic bite, regular and ugly, like surface cutters had finally found the line of the chamber, and were working down through packed dirt 1 layer at a time. Nathan felt the urgency hit the room all at once. He slung the backpack onto the nearest crate, ripped it fully open, and dumped the contents across the field table. Photo. Tags. Map. Trauma supplies. Batteries. A compact recorder the size of a cigarette pack. A sealed memory drive. A rusted key on a steel ring stamped B9. And under the false bottom, 1 last item none of them had mentioned. A child's drawing folded in half. Cheap wax crayon on lined paper. The lines were rough, but the subjects were obvious. A big dog. A tall man beside the dog. And a rectangle with shoulder straps colored dark green. The backpack. Above the drawing, in shaky letters, Nate plus Atlas come back. Nathan's fingers went numb. He unfolded the page the rest of the way. In one corner, someone had drawn a red door with a black circle in the middle. In another, 3 stick figures stood behind bars. He did not realize he had stopped breathing until June took the picture from his hand before he crushed it. She made that 2 nights ago, she said. Nathan looked at her. Who made it? June did not answer immediately. Owen did. Leah. The name meant nothing. The way he said it did. Nathan looked back to the drawing. Why would some kid know my name? Mercer laughed once, tired and bitter. There's the right question. Nathan rounded on him. Then answer it. Mercer's eyes flicked toward Owen as if passing final authority. Owen gave the smallest nod. Mercer said, Because you already brought her out once. The room went silent except for the faint bite of cutters above and Atlas's breathing near the tunnel mouth. Nathan stared at him. No. Mercer did not blink. Yes. I've never been here. June slid the compact recorder toward him across the table. That's why he took this. Nathan looked down at the recorder. 1 button had been marked with white paint. Play. Owen's voice was weaker now. I made it out to the wash. I knew Atlas would still track the old safe lines. I knew if he found anybody, it would be you. But I didn't know how much they took. Nathan kept staring at the recorder. Took? June's voice sharpened. Your memory, Nathan. He laughed, but it broke halfway out. You don't just take memory. Mercer answered. You do if the whole program was built around what someone remembers under pressure. Nathan looked at Atlas. The shepherd was watching him. Waiting. That hurt the worst. He hit play. Static burst from the tiny speaker. Then breathing. Fast. Controlled. A man trying not to sound afraid and failing around the edges. His own voice. If Atlas gets this to me, That means Owen didn't make surface or I didn't make me. Nathan nearly dropped the recorder. The voice went on. Don't waste time arguing with Mercer. He tells the truth ugly, but he tells it. June too, if she's still alive. Listen carefully, Nate, because if this recording reached you, then they cut you again. Nathan stood frozen while his own voice continued through the static. Leah is in South Annex below marker B9. Red door, circle lock. 3 juveniles were left in holding C when the transfer failed. I got one out, not all. If you remember none of this, that means Gate 2 reset worked too well. June closed her eyes for 1 second. Mercer looked away. Owen just watched Nathan absorb the impact. On the recorder, Nathan's voice hardened. Do not trust Bishop. He was never extraction. He was containment with our patch on. If he reaches Leah before you do, they move the kids east and burn the annex clean. The cutters above bit deeper. Dust shook loose from the lamp wires. Atlas barked twice, furious at the ceiling. The recording continued. You're going to want proof before you believe any of this. Here it is. The dog was yours before Owen ever handled him. They paired you in lane 4 before deployment and used the convoy to mask a live transfer. You were never supposed to survive the split with memory intact. If you're listening now, then Atlas remembered for both of us. Nathan could not feel his hands. There were fragments coming now whether he wanted them or not. A kennel lane. The smell of bleach and concrete. Young Atlas pressing his body against wire. A little girl with cropped hair drawing on paper in a room with no windows. Nathan kneeling beside her saying, I'll come back before lights out. Then boots in the hall. Owen yelling. A red door. The recorder hissed. Then his own voice, quieter this time. And if you still think this is a trick, turn the drawing over. Nathan snatched the paper from June and flipped it. On the back, taped flat beneath clear plastic, was a tiny strip of medical wristband torn from a child's arm. Leah Colt temp unit see the room tipped. Nathan heard June inhale. Mercer muttered, There. Owen's eyes stayed on Nathan's face. Now you understand why the bag changed everything. Nathan stared at the wristband until the letters blurred. Cole. Not coincidence. Not random witness. His mouth dried out so badly it hurt. Who is Leah? No one answered. That silence lasted only 2 seconds, but in those 2 seconds Nathan learned more than if they had all started talking at once. June looked at Owen. Mercer looked at the floor. Atlas came off the tunnel mouth and pressed hard against Nathan's leg. Owen finally said, The reason they reset you. Nathan took 1 step back from the table. No. Owen's face tightened with grief. I'm sorry. Don't. Nathan's voice shook with sudden violence. Do not be sorry before you explain. Mercer leaned on the cart rail. There isn't time to unpack all of it. Nathan rounded on him. Make time. The chamber lights flickered. Then one of the dead monitors along the wall snapped on by itself. All of them turned. White static. Then a rolling frame line. Then a live black and white feed from somewhere deeper in the annex. Concrete room. Single cot. Red door with a black circular lock exactly like the one in the drawing. And on that cot sat a thin dark-haired girl in an oversized gray sweatshirt, hugging her knees and staring at the camera as if she had been waiting for it to wake. Nathan's whole body locked. The girl could not have been more than 10. She had his eyes. June whispered, No one turned that system back on. Mercer went pale. That means they're already moving her. As if hearing him, the girl on the screen lifted her head slowly towards something outside the camera's frame. A shadow crossed the cell doorway. Then the monitor audio cracked alive, just long enough for the room to hear one frightened whisper from the child on the cot. He came back without the dog. He came back without the dog. The words came out of the monitor like a hand around Nathan's throat. On the black and white feed, the girl on the cot did not move after she said it. She only kept staring at the shadow outside the frame, shoulders drawn tight, hands locked around her knees with the rigid stillness of a child who had already learned that panic only gives cruel people something to watch. Nathan stood frozen. The room, the red door, the black circled lock, the oversized sweatshirt hanging off narrow shoulders, the eyes on the screen, none of it felt new anymore. It felt buried. Buried and kicking. June crossed to the monitor first. She slapped the side panel, checked the dead control bank beneath it, then cursed under her breath. It's not our power. Mercer tried to stand too fast, went white, and caught himself on the rail cart. Then he's already inside the lower annex. Nathan dragged his eyes off the girl and looked at Owen. Who? Owen's face had gone harder than pain. Bishop. The name hit with the ugly weight of near memory. Atlas lifted his head from Nathan's leg and growled at the screen. On the feed, the child, Leah, heard something outside the camera's view. Her face turned a fraction toward the cell door, then back toward the lens, as if she knew someone somewhere might be seeing her, and she was trying to choose the right thing to say before it was too late. Nathan took one step toward the monitor. Leah did the same thing he had done 1,000 times under pressure. She swallowed first, then forced her face still. Tell me who she is, he said. No one answered quickly enough. Nathan slammed the table with both hands so hard the batteries jumped and the recorder skipped across the map. Now! Mercer looked at Owen again. Owen shut his eyes once, then opened them, and met Nathan's stare without anywhere left to hide. She's your daughter. Nothing in the chamber moved after that. Nathan actually heard the blood inside his own ears. Then he laughed once, sharp and unbelieving and close to violent. No. Owen held the stare. Yes. No. She was 3 when they took her below. Nathan's hand went to the back of the chair in front of him and gripped so hard the wood creaked. 3. His mind flashed. A little girl asleep on his chest in a motel room. A crayon sun drawn on cheap paper. Small hands in his beard. A woman's voice laughing from a sink somewhere behind him, and then the image shattered before he could catch her face. Nathan bent over the chair, breathing hard. June spoke quietly now, not gentle, just controlled. You were never supposed to hold on to that part. He looked up at her like he might shoot her for the sentence alone. What part? The part that made you impossible to reset clean. Mercer wiped blood from the corner of his mouth. Bishop argued you'd keep the mission. Owen argued you'd keep the girl. Elias compromised and stripped both. Nathan turned toward him slowly. Elias, the old man at the top of the project. Nathan stared. Project? Mercer gave a tired, bitter exhale. Call it whatever lets you sleep after. It won't change what they built. The monitor crackled. Leah was still on the cot, but the shadow at the door had moved closer now. A boot entered the frame. Then a gloved hand. Atlas barked once, explosive enough to shake Nathan out of the paralysis. The shepherd moved in a circle, then went straight to the field table and pawed hard at the red-marked county map. Once. Twice. Then he stood over the lower right corner, where the third circled site had been marked in thick grease pencil near the foothills. June saw it immediately. That's not the lower annex. Mercer's face changed. No. Nathan looked from the map to the monitor to Atlas. What? Owen pushed himself up on one elbow despite the pain. He's not holding her there. How do you know? Because the room on screen is Holding C, June said. Holding C doesn't have ceiling cameras. Only door glass. That angle is wrong. Mercer cursed aloud. They rerouted archive footage. The shadow on the monitor moved again. The gloved hand rapped once against the outside of the cell door. Leah flinched exactly half an inch. Nathan stared at the feed, fury and fear colliding so hard he felt nauseous. So she's not there? Owen's expression twisted. She was. That word hit worse than if he had said no. Was. Nathan snatched up the map. Then where? June pointed at the foothill circle Atlas had marked. Transfer pad east of the old reservoir line. If Bishop pulled her from holding C after the wash breach, he'd move by legacy route, not surface road. Mercer nodded once. And if he's moving east, he's not taking her to keep. He's taking her to erase. Nathan looked at Owen. Why would he do that? Because once Atlas reached you with the bag, you became a liability he couldn't predict. Nathan flattened the map against the table and forced himself to breathe like a soldier again, not a father who had just been told his child existed inside a nightmare built out of him. There's a route, he said. Show me. June moved instantly. She dragged the lantern closer, jabbed at the map with a pen, and spoke fast. OK Transit runs north 200 yards, then drops east beneath the maintenance trenches. There's a switch gate here, and one flooded section here. If the pumps are dead, we swim or reroute. Mercer pointed with blood-slick fingers. Not if you use the vent crawl from pairing lane 4. Nathan's head snapped up. Pairing lane 4. The phrase hit with a flash. A concrete lane, chain link, a younger Atlas pushing his body against the fence, a tiny girl on the other side laughing because the dog kept sneezing at chalk dust on her hands. Nathan grabbed the edge of the table until the memory passed. June saw that too. You remember where it is? No. A beat. Maybe. Above them, the cutters bit deeper. Dirt rained from one corner of the ceiling. One of the lamps flickered and went dim. Mercer looked at Nathan, with the sort of brutal honesty wounded men save for moments when nothing else matters. Then Navy kills her. Silence. Nathan looked at the monitor again. Leah had lowered her head now, but not in surrender. She was listening. Counting. Waiting. He knew that posture too. Knew it because it was his. Or hers from him. The loss was already beginning to happen, and he could feel it. Because even if they moved now, even if the vent crawl was open, even if Bishop hadn't already reached the foothill transfer, they had lost the biggest advantage they had without knowing it. Time. June broke the silence. We need to move. Owen grabbed Nathan's wrist before he could answer. Listen to me first. Nathan tried to pull free. Owen held on. Bishop will expect you to go for Leah the second you know. That's the trap. He wants you hot, fast, unplanned. Nathan leaned in. Then what do you want? Owen's face tightened with pain and something darker than fear. I want you to take the drive and go public. Nathan stared at him. What? The memory drive. Names, routes, kid rosters, handler lanes, enough to bury all of it if you get it to daylight. June shut her eyes for 1 second. Mercer looked away. Nathan understood before he wanted to. You're telling me to leave her? No, Owen said. I'm telling you there may only be time to say one thing. The sentence hit like a blunt instrument. Atlas barked once, furious at the very idea. Nathan rounded on June. No, she did not soften it. If Bishop's already at East Transfer, then Owen's right about one thing. This window is almost closed. She's my daughter. And this annex holds more than one child. He stepped back from the table like the words themselves had struck him. Mercer forced himself higher on the cart bench. That's the loss, Nathan. That's always been the loss. They set it up so a good man has to choose where to fail. Then the monitor feed changed. The black and white image of the red-doored cell vanished in a blast of static. When it came back, the camera showed a different room. Metal walls. Harness rack. Medical chair. a yellow line painted on the floor. And in the center of it, held by a man in a dark jacket with one hand locked around her shoulder, stood Leah. Real this time. Her face was wet with tears she was trying not to show, and when she lifted her head toward the camera, Nathan saw the whole impossible truth written across it. She knew him. Not from a story. Not from a file. From memory. Bishop's voice came over the speaker feed, calm and clean and close enough to feel like he was already standing in the tunnel with them. "Nathan," he said, "bring me Atlas, and I'll let the girl keep breathing." Atlas exploded into snarling barks, and the screen timer in the corner started counting down from 5 minutes. Nathan stared at the monitor like he could reach through it by force alone. On screen, Leah did not cry the way frightened children usually cry. She was holding it back with visible effort, lower lip trembling, shoulders locked, trying to stay still because the man gripping her shoulder had trained fear into obedience. That made the whole image worse. It meant this was not her first time being used. Atlas barked himself hoarse at the screen. Bishop's hand tightened on the girl's shoulder. Leah flinched, then forced herself still again. Mercer swore under his breath. June had already moved. She cleared the field table with one arm, spread the county map flat again, and stabbed the pen at the eastern circle. "If this is live, then he's at transfer pad C." Nathan did not look away from the monitor. "How far?" "Depends which route." "How fast?" June's voice snapped. "Depends which route." Nathan rounded on her so fast the chair behind him slammed into the wall. "Then pick one." The chamber went silent except for Atlas's snarling and the dull metallic bite of cutters somewhere above the ceiling. June did not step back. "Direct tunnel is fastest," she said. "It's also the route Bishop expects and the one he'll have covered." Mercer pushed himself more upright on the cart bench. Blood had dried brown along the side of his shirt, and every word looked like it hurt him to spend. "Then crawl from lane 4 comes out behind the pad service wall." Nathan's eyes cut to him. "You said maybe?" Mercer nodded once. "Because it collapsed 12 years ago." Owen's voice came weaker now, but harder. "Not all the way. I used it once after the split." Nathan looked at him. "After what split?" Nobody answered at first. The timer on the screen kept dropping. For 21:420 Bishop shifted position on screen, and for the first time Nathan could see him clearly. Mid-40s maybe. Clean beard. Flat eyes. Dark jacket with no unit patch. The kind of controlled face built to reassure until it was time to hurt someone. He looked into the camera like he already knew Nathan was watching and enjoyed being right. "Atlas for the girl," Bishop said. "You always were emotional around the dog, Nate. It makes you easier to shape." Leah shut her eyes briefly at the sound of Nathan's name. Atlas barked once, furious enough to rattle the lantern glass. Nathan looked at the dog. The shepherd had planted himself squarely between Nathan and the screen now, body angled as though the threat was physically present in the room, and the machine simply hadn't admitted it yet. He was not afraid. Not of Bishop. Not of the timer. Not even of what Nathan might decide. That steadiness nearly broke him. Nathan crouched in front of Atlas and got both hands into the thick fur of his neck. The dog's whole body was vibrating with purpose. Memory. Loyalty. A bond built before half his life had been stolen out of him. Bishop wanted the dog. Not the bag. Not the drive. Not even Nathan first. Atlas. That meant Atlas was more than proof. He was a key. Nathan rose slowly and turned back to the table. "Why?" June understood immediately. "Because the dog verifies the old line." Mercer nodded grimly. "Handler continuity, behavioral anchor, memory confirmation. Atlas is the only living piece that can still authenticate both sides of the program." Nathan's mind flashed. Young Atlas in a kennel lane, his own hand through chain link, a clipboard voice saying subject response elevated when canine present. The major reveal was close now. He could feel it moving under the floor of the room. He looked at Owen. "Say it plain." Owen met his eyes. "You were not just in the program, Nathan. You were the proof of concept pair." The words settled in the chamber with the weight of metal. Nathan did not move. June kept going because someone had to, and time had stopped being polite. "The military-facing version was real enough to survive audits. Handler candidate. Canine bonding. Combat adaptation. But beneath that, Elias built a second objective around you. He wanted to know whether loyalty itself could be conditioned hard enough to survive separation, trauma, reassignment, memory suppression, and family disruption." Nathan's mouth dried out. "And?" Mercer gave the answer. "And you worked." No one spoke after that. Because all at once, the missing pieces began connecting in ways Nathan did not want but could no longer stop. The convoy. The blackout years. Atlas appearing on the property instead of any other dog. Leah knowing his name. The recorder saying, "If Atlas gets this to me." The drawing. The gate. The phrases that had sounded insane until they stacked. He wasn't just a veteran who had wandered into someone else's secret. He was the line they built the secret around. The timer dropped again. 3:47 on screen. Leah lifted her head toward Bishop with a courage that looked too old for her face. "He won't trade the dog," she whispered. Bishop smiled faintly. "You say that because you don't remember him correctly." Nathan stopped breathing. Leah did remember him. Maybe not everything. Maybe not enough. But enough to defend his choice before he made it. That hit deeper than anything else. June slammed a fresh magazine into her pistol. "Decision now." Nathan looked at the memory drive on the table. At the backpack. At the map. At Owen bleeding into the cot. At Mercer barely conscious on the rail cart. At Atlas. Then at the screen again. He saw it then. In the lower left corner of the live feed, partially obscured by an equipment crate near the floor, was a faded black number stenciled on the concrete wall. Not transfer pad C, lane 4. He crossed the room in 2 strides and jabbed a finger at the monitor. "That's not East pad." June stared. Mercer leaned forward. Owen's eyes sharpened. Nathan spoke fast now, the way he used to when chaos finally became legible. "The room's metal, not cinder block. The yellow line is an old lane marking, not transfer hazard tape. And that wall number, lane 4. He's not moving her. He's baiting me back to the pairing corridor." Mercer cursed aloud. "He wants the dog in the old lane." June understood a second later. "Because that's where the original recognition equipment still exists." Nathan nodded once. "If he verifies Atlas there, he doesn't need the drive. He rebuilds the claim live." Owen forced himself upright with a hiss of pain. "And if he has Leah in lane 4, then he's not trying to erase her." Nathan looked at him. "He's trying to use her." Owen finished. Major reveal. Not a kill setup. A reclamation. Bishop wasn't offering a trade because he wanted the dog as a trophy. He wanted Atlas back in the one place the old system still knew how to read him, with Nathan close enough for the remaining sensors to authenticate the pair and reattach the line legally, biologically, and procedurally in one move. Leah wasn't just a hostage. She was the missing child anchor in the same design. Nathan felt sick. June's voice cut clean through it. "Then we hit lane 4 from the vent side, pull her before he gets the dog into sensor range, and burn every live node in the room." Mercer looked at Nathan. "That's the right play. Not with you bleeding out. Forgive me." "No." Mercer's expression hardened. "Read the room, Cole." Nathan did. He hated what he saw. Owen was barely holding on. Mercer could maybe stand, not fight. June could move and shoot. Atlas could lead. Leah had less than 4 minutes left on whatever version of the threat Bishop was prepared to make real. And Nathan was the only one in the room Bishop actually wanted alive and present. Which meant he was also the best bait. The loss from Part 6 had not left. It had simply changed shape. Now it became this. If Nathan went to lane 4, he might get Leah back and lose Atlas. If he protected Atlas, Bishop might secure the girl and reactivate the whole buried line around her. Either way, something precious stood on the edge. Nathan reached for the backpack and pulled the old dog tags free again. His own name flashed dull in the tunnel light. Then he took the memory drive and pressed it into Owen's bandaged hand. "If I don't make it back?" Owen shook his head once. "No." Nathan leaned close. "If I don't, you get that to daylight." The old teammate's eyes changed at that. Not fear. Acceptance of the wrong shape. June saw it too. "You're not going alone." "Yes, I am." Atlas barked hard at that, as if the dog understood the sentence and rejected it on principle. Nathan put one hand on the shepherd's neck. "Not this time." Atlas's growl turned low and wounded. The timer on the screen hit 2:59. Bishop looked straight into the camera and said, "If the dog is not in the room when the clock ends, I start with the girl's left hand." Leah closed her eyes. Nathan's vision narrowed. He drew one breath, then another, then picked up the pistol, the flashlight, and the rusted B9 key from the table. June grabbed his wrist before he could turn away. "There's something else in lane 4, she said. Nathan held her stare. "What?" Her face tightened. "The original pairing archive." Mercer looked stricken now, not just injured. Owen's voice came out almost too low to hear. "If Bishop opens that room while you're inside it, a beat, he can prove you belong to them." Nathan pulled his wrist free. Then Atlas stepped in front of him, blocking the tunnel with his whole body, and refused to move. Atlas stepped in front of Nathan and refused to move. He planted himself in the tunnel mouth with the authority of a military dog who had made a tactical decision and expected the human to understand it. Nathan stared down at him. The shepherd's body blocked the passage completely. Ears forward. Head low. Eyes fixed not on Nathan's face, but on the backpack, then the monitor, then back to Nathan again. A sequence. A warning. A plan. "Move," Nathan said. Atlas didn't. The timer kept falling on the screen behind him. 2:43, 2:42, 2:41. Leah sat rigid in the grainy feed, while Bishop stood just outside the camera angle, one hand still on her shoulder. Nathan could not see his face anymore, only the line of a dark sleeve and the faint reflection of old fluorescent light off metal at the edge of the frame. Lane 4. June came around the table fast. "He's right." Nathan's head snapped toward her. "What?" "Not about staying," she said. "About not taking the obvious route." Mercer dragged himself forward on the cart bench. "Bishop wants urgency. Straight line. Dog, handler, child, same room. He's rebuilding the original geometry." Owen's voice was weaker now, but harder. "There's another way into lane 4. Service cavity behind the observation wall." Nathan felt the old pressure building behind his eyes again. Too many inputs. Too much grief. Not enough time. Atlas barked once and put a paw on the fallen recorder. Nathan looked down. The little device had cracked open at the edge when the table was hit earlier. A sliver of old magnetic tape glinted through the casing. June saw it too. "Play the rest. We don't have time." "Then make it." The timer on the monitor hit 2:19. Nathan scooped up the recorder and slammed the painted play button again. Static. Then his own voice, older and rougher than memory wanted to admit. If Atlas gets this to me, that means Owen didn't make surface or I didn't make me. Nathan nearly dropped the recorder. The voice went on. Do not bring Atlas through the front of lane 4. The room can still read him. There's an override socket behind observation wall B. Use the B9 key, then pull the amber breaker. If the breaker fails, the kennel doors cycle and the room goes live. June looked up sharply. Breaker. That's what we need. Mercer swore weakly. If it still exists. Nathan kept listening. And if you've forgotten why none of this can be allowed to stand, here's the part they took. Static rose. Then another voice entered the tape. A child. Leah. Younger. Maybe 6. Promise? Nathan stopped breathing. His recorded self answered gently, painfully intimate, in a way no fabricated file ever could be. Promise. I come back, I take Atlas, and I take you. No more rooms after tonight. A pause on the tape. A small inhale. Then the little girl asked the question that broke him open. If they make you forgive me, will the dog still know? The tape clicked off. No one in the chamber moved. Atlas left the tunnel mouth, crossed the room in 2 steps, and pressed his body hard against Nathan's leg. That was the answer. June slammed a fresh magazine into her pistol. Decision now. Nathan looked at the memory drive on the table. At Owen bleeding into the cot. At Mercer barely conscious on the rail cart. At Atlas. Then at the screen again. He saw it then. In the lower left corner of the live feed, partially obscured by an equipment crate near the floor, was a faded black number stenciled on the concrete wall. Not transfer pad C, lane 4. He crossed the room in 2 strides and jabbed a finger at the monitor. That's not East pad. June stared. Mercer leaned forward. Owen's eyes sharpened. Nathan spoke fast now, the way he used to when chaos finally became legible. The room's metal, not cinder block. The yellow line is an old lane marking, not transfer hazard tape. And that wall number, lane 4. He's not moving her. He's baiting me back to the pairing corridor. Mercer cursed aloud. He wants the dog in the old lane. June understood a second later. Because that's where the original recognition equipment still exists. Nathan nodded once. If he verifies Atlas there, he doesn't need to drive. He rebuilds the claim live. Owen forced himself upright with a hiss of pain. And if he has Leah in lane 4, then he's not trying to erase her. Nathan looked at him. He's trying to use her. Owen finished. The major reveal hit all at once. Bishop wasn't offering a trade because he wanted the dog as a trophy. He wanted Atlas back in the one place the old system still knew how to read him, with Nathan close enough for the remaining sensors to authenticate the pair and reattach the line in one move. Leah wasn't just a hostage. She was the missing child anchor in the same design. Nathan reached for the backpack and pulled the old dog tags free again. His own name flashed dull in the tunnel light. Then he took the memory drive and pressed it into Owen's bandaged hand. If I don't make it back. Owen shook his head once. No. Nathan leaned close. If I don't, you get that to daylight. June saw it too. You're not going alone. Yes, I am. Atlas barked hard at that. Nathan put one hand on the shepherd's neck. Not this time. Atlas's growl turned low and wounded. The timer on the screen hit 1:46. On screen, Bishop finally leaned into frame enough for Nathan to see him fully. Same clean beard. Same dead eyes. Same expression men wear when cruelty feels administrative. Nate, Bishop said to the camera, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Leah did not look at him. She looked into the lens. Toward Nathan. Then, very slightly, she shook her head. Nathan saw that. So did June. She remembers tactics, June whispered. No, Mercer said from the table. She remembers him? Nathan stood. Move! The next minute became steel dirt and pressure. June led them out the north passage at a crouched run, while Owen shoved the drive into a hidden pouch under the railcart seat, and Mercer killed the field lamps behind them one by one. Atlas flowed beside Nathan without sound now, every few steps looking out for the command Nathan still hadn't fully decided how to give. The tunnel narrowed after 30 yards. Concrete gave way to packed clay reinforced with old steel rings. Electrical conduit ran along the ceiling. Once they passed a row of sealed kennel shutters, with stenciled numbers flaking off the paint. Lane 2. Lane 3. Then a blackened service junction with one dead sign, half hanging on a bolt. Lane 4/OBS. Nathan stopped there harder than he meant to. Memory hit in fragments so violent they felt physical. Fluorescent hum, Atlas younger and barking from behind clear reinforced panels. A clipboard. Leah on the other side of glass drawing dogs on paper, while a speaker voice asked subject response after separation, and Nathan, younger, angrier, slamming both hands on a window and shouting to let the girl out first. The flash vanished. June steadied him with one hand to the shoulder. Stay here and drown in it later. He nodded once. The service cavity opening was half hidden behind a warped maintenance panel. June used the rusted B9 key from the backpack and swore when it didn't turn. Nathan took it from her, scraped grime from the lock face with his knife, and tried again. This time the key rotated. A magnetic click answered from within the wall. The panel opened inward 3 inches and released a burst of stale cold air smelling of dust, ozone, and dog disinfectant. Atlas whined softly. Nathan looked down the narrow black seam inside the wall and felt with total certainty that once he crawled through it, everything he had spent years not remembering would be waiting alive on the other side. June checked her pistol. We go in order. Me first to the socket. You after. Atlas stays here until the breaker drops. Atlas's growl began low and immediate. Nathan knelt. Stay. The dog's body vibrated. Stay. June slipped into the cavity sideways and vanished into darkness. Nathan followed with the flashlight clenched in his teeth and the pistol shoved ahead of him. The space was worse than expected, tight enough that his shoulder scraped concrete on one side and lived conduit on the other. Every breath kicked dust into his mouth. Then voices bled through the wall. Bishop. Calm. Close. Always the dog first. That's how he decides. Leah answered, her voice small but steady. You don't know him. Bishop laughed softly. I know what made him. Nathan stopped moving. Through a crack in the observation wall, he could see a sliver of lane 4. Yellow floor line. Leah's cot. Bishop's boots. The high-danger choice was seconds away now. And then Atlas disobeyed. Nathan heard the shepherd hit the maintenance panel behind them like a launched weapon, claws scraping metal, body forcing through the gap because somewhere in the room beyond the wall, Leah had started screaming. Atlas hit the maintenance panel like a launched weapon. Metal tore inward under the shepherd's weight. Nathan had only enough time to curse before the dog forced through the gap, body twisting toward Leah's scream. Nathan! June snapped. Move! Nathan rammed in after Atlas. Ahead, the cavity opened into a slit behind the one-way glass of lane 4, and what he saw through it made his chest go cold. Leah was no longer on the cot. Bishop had dragged her into the center of the lane, inside a faded yellow square beneath a ring of ceiling sensors Nathan had almost forgotten until that instant. The old recognition rig. Rusted kennel gates on both sides. Then red scanner lines sweeping wall to wall. Leah's wrists bound in front. Bishop behind her with one hand in her hair and a compact shock baton in the other. The moment Atlas burst through the maintenance panel, Bishop smiled. There, he said. That's the shape. Nathan drove his shoulder into the observation glass. The pane held. June came in behind him, pistol in one hand, the B9 key in the other. "Socket first." But Atlas did not wait. The Shepherd hit the floor of lane 4 and launched straight at Bishop. Leah dropped flat by instinct. Atlas cleared her by inches, slammed into Bishop's chest, and drove both of them sideways out of the yellow square. The shock baton went spinning across the lane. Nathan ran the glass again. This time the adhesive cracked. He saw Leah scramble to the base of the observation wall exactly where the service cavity opened. Her eyes found Nathan through the fractured glass. "Dad," she whispered. Nathan drew back and fired twice into the safety corner of the pane. The glass blew inward. He came through its shoulder first, every nerve in his body pulling toward Leah. June dropped through behind him and sprinted for the wall socket hidden beneath the dead lane monitor. Bishop was already on one knee. Atlas had Bishop's sleeve in his teeth, but Bishop used the kennel bars for leverage and drove a hidden blade down toward the dog's neck. Nathan fired and hit Bishop high in the shoulder instead. The blade missed Atlas by a breath. Leah crawled toward Nathan. He dropped, cut the restraint strap, and pulled her into his chest. She was real. Warm. Shaking. "I've got you." Leah clung once, then pushed against him to speak. "The floor." Nathan looked down. The yellow square was lighting from beneath. Recognition sequence. Atlas understood before he did. The Shepherd released Bishop and bounded clear, just as the square flooded with white grid light. Overhead, an old speaker crackled alive. "Lane 4. Pair reacquisition active." June jammed in the B9 key and twisted. Nothing. She swore, ripped the panel free, exposed dead wiring and one amber breaker sealed under cracked plastic. "I need 3 seconds." "You've got 1," Nathan shouted. A second security door began to lift, revealing 2 containment operators in dark jackets and face shields. Bishop smiled through blood. "That's enough. The room has him." Atlas barked once and shot back toward Nathan instead of deeper into cover. If the dog crossed the square while the recognition rig was live, the whole buried claim could reattach. Nathan grabbed Leah and rolled behind the overturned restraint chair just as the first operator fired. Weighted capture shot. The net blew across the lane where Atlas had been and wrapped the empty kennel gate instead, crackling with current. Leah flinched hard against Nathan's chest. Atlas snapped at the live mesh from a safe angle, then looked back at Nathan, waiting for command. June smashed the amber breaker with the butt of her pistol. Still nothing. The second operator came through the rising door low and disciplined, weapon tracking for Atlas, not Nathan. Nathan shoved Leah behind the chair, rose into a crouch, and put 2 fast rounds into the operator's thigh and visor seam. The man spun sideways and crashed into the sink station. The first operator cut loose from the net gun and reached for a sidearm. Nathan grabbed the shock baton off the floor and hurled it into the open breaker housing. Metal hit live contacts. The whole wall exploded in sparks. Lane 4 screamed. Scanner line shattered. Ceiling sensors strobed white, red, white again. Atlas launched through the darkening square as the recognition grid died under him. A monitor over the kennel lane flashed to life with old archive text. Pair match /subject Cole/K9 Atlas /status pending. Nathan saw Bishop see it. That changed the man. He lunged for Leah. Atlas hit him in the ribs before Nathan could fire, slamming him through the partially risen kennel gate with enough force to bend the track. Bishop disappeared into the side run coughing when Atlas stayed on him. June ripped the smoking breaker fully out of the wall. "Move!" Nathan scooped Leah up and ran. The service exit on the north side of lane 4 had unlocked under the cascade failure. June was already through it. Nathan followed with Leah in his arms. Then the twist arrived. Atlas did not follow. Nathan hit the threshold, looked back, and saw why. Bishop had fallen into the side kennel run, but as he went he had slapped the emergency retention switch built into the lane column. A steel fire door began dropping between the run and the north exit. Atlas was on the wrong side of it. The dog had Bishop pinned again, teeth at the shoulder, body driving the man away from the corridor where Nathan and Leah were escaping. He was holding the line on purpose. "Atlas!" Nathan shouted. The shepherd looked up. For one impossible second the whole room narrowed to that look. Not panic. Not helplessness. Decision. The fire door dropped lower. June grabbed Nathan's arm. "If you go back now, Leah dies here." Leah turned in Nathan's arms, saw the door descending, saw Atlas behind it, and made a small broken sound. Bishop, half under the dog, laughed blood into the floor. "That's better," he said. "That's the original shape." Nathan wrenched against June's grip. The fire door dropped to waist height, then chest height, then throat height. Atlas backed up one pace from Bishop and stood directly in the narrowing gap, as if he meant to hold the whole collapsing room open by loyalty alone. Nathan took one step toward him anyway. Then the operators in the lane recovery corridor opened fire past the dog. Rounds blew sparks off the steel frame beside Atlas's head. June dragged Nathan through the north exit with both hands, while Leah screamed his name, and Atlas vanished behind the descending door. The corridor beyond was a narrow service run. Nathan stumbled hard, nearly dropped Leah, then caught himself against the wall and spun back toward the sealed lane entrance. The fire door hit the floor with a killing finality. A tiny viewport in the upper panel flashed clear for 1 second. Nathan saw Atlas through it. The shepherd was still standing. Blood across one shoulder. Ears up. Body between Bishop and the sealed door. Then the viewport clouded black as smoke suppression dumped into lane 4. Leah twisted in Nathan's arms and clawed for the window. "Atlas!" June hauled both of them down the corridor before the returning operators reached the corner. Alarms changed pitch again, annex wide now. They hit the service stair and climbed 2 flights into a junction passage. June punched the call stud for the utility lift. Nothing. She hit it again. "Power cycling off the breaker failure." Leah was shaking so hard her teeth clicked. Nathan set her down only long enough to get both hands on her face. "Look at me!" She did. "We're getting out." Her chin trembled. "Not without him." Nathan shut his eyes for 1 beat. Not because she was wrong. Because she was right. Behind them, the barricaded stair door boomed once. Twice. Containment team. June checked the magazine in her pistol. "We have 1 minute before they cut through." Nathan looked at the dead lift, then at the corridor map bolted under cracked plastic beside it. Then he saw one line that hadn't mattered until now. K9 hold/vet return/manual. There was another route back to Atlas. A maintenance return shaft running above the kennels and dumping directly into old K9 hold cells on the far side of the fire doors. June saw his eyes fix. "No!" Nathan was already reading the map. "The return shaft crosses over lane 4. That shaft was sealed after the burn." "Then sealed isn't the same as gone." The stair door shuddered under a third hit. Leah grabbed his jacket. "If you leave now, they'll take me again." He dropped to one knee in front of her. "Father." "I'm not leaving you," he said. "I'm putting you where they can't touch you for 3 minutes." June stared at him. "Nathan, you know the field station route." "No," he said. "The point is the dog stayed behind so we could get this far." The stair door began to split around the latch. Nathan looked once more at the annex map. At the maintenance shaft access panel 3 doors down. Then he heard it. Through steel. Through alarms. through distance and smoke. One bark. Atlas. Still fighting on the other side of the annex. The bark came through steel, and smoke like a pulse through Nathan's bones. Still fighting. The stair door behind them split wider around the latch. June shoved Leah into the dark service alcove beside the dead utility lift and jammed a pipe through the handles to buy seconds. Nathan was already moving toward the maintenance panel marked K9 hold/vent return/manual. Leah caught his sleeve. "If you go, they'll lock you out." Nathan turned back. He dropped to one knee. "I am not leaving you. I am going to the dog because he stayed so you could get this far. Then I come back." Leah stared at him, then nodded once. June snapped a fresh magazine into her pistol. 90 seconds. Nathan tore the maintenance panel open. Behind it, a narrow shaft dropped into darkness. Dust and smoke breathed up through the opening. Somewhere below, Atlas barked again, shorter now, angrier, closer. Nathan touched the dog tags in his pocket once, then dropped into the shaft. 2 ladder rungs snapped under his weight, and sent him sliding the last 6 feet into a low-service trench above the kennel rows. He hit hard, rolled, kept the pistol, and came up in a corridor lined with mesh vents cut into the wall. Barking echoed through the grills. Not panic. Work. Nathan moved fast. The trench ran above the lanes, giving him fragments of the rooms beneath through the vents, empty kennel runs, one flooded wash station, then finally lane 4. Smoke still fogged the room below. The fire door remained shut across the main exit. The yellow recognition square was dark now. Atlas was still standing. The shepherd had Bishop pinned in the side run against the lower kennel gate, one paw on the man's chest, muzzle blood dark, shoulder fur torn and slick. Bishop's blade was gone. One hand clawed weakly at the floor. The other was jammed under the dog's throat, not strong enough to throw him off. Atlas wasn't killing him. He was containing him. Nathan found the vent return release wheel above the lane and spun it with both hands. Russ screamed. The old grill dropped inward in a shower of dust and hit the floor below with a clang that snapped Bishop's head up. His eyes found Nathan through smoke and metal. "Nate!" he rasped, blood in his teeth. "There you are!" Atlas looked up too, but did not break position. Nathan dropped through the opening. The impact jarred his knee, but he came up aiming. Bishop saw the pistol, then smiled anyway through the blood. "You came back for the dog," he said. "I told him that was your real line." Nathan crossed to Atlas slowly, one hand lowered toward the dog's neck. "Out." Atlas held for half a heartbeat longer, then stepped back on stiff legs and moved to Nathan's side. Bishop dragged in a painful breath. "You still don't understand what he is." Nathan's voice came flat. "He's family." Bishop laughed once. "No. He's the mechanism that made you one." Nathan pressed the muzzle under Bishop's jaw. "Wrong speech." Smoke curled along the kennel floor. Alarms pulsed deeper in the annex. Somewhere above, the stair door finally gave way with a shriek of steel. Nathan reached for the lane control column and found the emergency retention switch Bishop had used. One shove threw it back to green. The fire door began to retract. Bishop watched the moving steel and spoke with exhausted honesty. "Leah wasn't an accident, Nate. She was the continuity child. Proof that attachment survives overwrite. You, the dog, the girl. Same triangle. Same lane. Same result." Nathan felt the words hit, but they no longer owned the room. Leah existed beyond the program now. Atlas had chosen them beyond the conditioning. Nathan crouched lower. "And what did your result prove?" Bishop swallowed blood and said nothing. Nathan answered for him. "That you could build a room, not a life." The fire door lifted high enough to clear. Nathan seized Bishop by the jacket, dragged him half upright, and drove him ahead into the corridor. Atlas limped beside them. Back in the service junction, June had dropped one containment operator and was fighting the second around the dead lift housing. Leah was crouched behind the utility box exactly where Nathan left her. Nathan fired once. The operator spun and went down. June looked up, relief flashing across her face when she saw Atlas, then hardening again as she saw Bishop in Nathan's grip. "Move! More are coming!" Mercer's voice crackled over the corridor speaker, rough with blood and static. "Field station's gone. West tunnel collapsing. Surface vent only." Leah saw Atlas and broke. She ran to the dog first. The shepherd dropped carefully onto his haunches so she could get both arms around his neck without hurting the torn shoulder worse. He pressed his muzzle into her hair and shut his eyes for one small second. June already understood. She grabbed the backpack, jammed the recorder and remaining papers back inside, and slung it across Nathan's shoulder. "You carry her if he can't." Leah lifted her face from Atlas's fur. "He can." Bishop heard the shouting and straightened just enough to remember arrogance. "If you take me out of here alive, they still have a chain." Nathan looked at him. June did too. No words passed between them. Nathan took the memory drive from his pocket, pressed it into June's hand, and shoved Bishop hard through the broken lift shaft rail. The man fell out of sight into black machinery with one sharp cry that ended before it became a scream. Leah flinched. Atlas did not. Then they ran. The surface vent climb was worse than the shaft down. June climbed first. Leah followed. Nathan came behind with the backpack, one hand always at the small of Leah's back, while Atlas drove upward from below on pure obedience and pain. Halfway up, gunfire erupted in the junction chamber beneath them. Rounds snapped into the concrete sleeve. Dust showered down. One slug sparked off the ladder rung by Nathan's hand. Atlas barked once below, furious and alive. June reached the vent cap and hammered the manual release wheel. It stuck. Nathan climbed one-handed the last 4 feet, wedged himself beside her, and put both hands on the wheel. Together, they hauled. The old wheel gave with a shriek. Then again. Then the cap burst open. Daylight hit the shaft in one violent flood. June went up first, rolled onto gravel, and covered the perimeter. Nathan lifted Leah through. She turned at the surface immediately, dropped to her knees, and reached both hands down the shaft. "Atlas!" The shepherd jumped, claws scraping concrete, and Nathan caught him under the chest and hauled him the last distance out. They spilled onto the edge of the abandoned reservoir line, just as the first internal charges began going off below them. The ground jumped. Then again. Then a deep rolling collapse moved under the dry earth. Nathan pulled Leah and Atlas clear of the vent housing as the steel cap blew off its hinges and smoke punched into the open air. Wind had come back. Then Leah looked at Nathan and asked, carefully, "You remembered me?" Nathan knelt in the gravel. He touched the child's face with both hands, then rested his forehead gently against hers. "Not enough," he said, "but enough to come." Leah cried then. Real crying? Relief and grief together. She folded into him. Atlas pressed against both of them, one torn shoulder trembling, but his body still trying to hold the family into one shape. June stood over them with the pistol lowered. Mercer's voice came one final time over the emergency receiver clipped to the backpack strap, thin with static. "Did you get the dog?" Nathan looked at Atlas. At Leah. At the first line of dawn, breaking over the ruined ground. "Yeah," he said. "And the girl." A pause. Then Mercer laughed once, weak but real. "Good. Then burn the rest." The receiver died. Behind them, the annex gave one last deep shudder and collapsed inward beneath the reservoir line. Smoke vented into dawn. Concrete sank. Whatever remained of Lane 4, the pairing lanes, the old records, the rooms built to turn loyalty into property, none of it held. Leah pulled back just enough to look at Nathan again. "What now?" He looked at June. At the backpack. At Atlas. Then back at Leah. "Now," he said, "nobody owns the dog. Nobody owns you. And nobody writes our names into rooms ever again." Atlas leaned his head into Nathan's side. The old life had come back for him in a backpack beside a dry wash. The truth inside it had changed everything. But in the end, the thing that broke the whole buried machine was not the drive, not the map, not even the gunfire. It was this: one shepherd, one veteran, one little girl, and a promise that survived even when memory did not. Under the hard dawn, with the ruins of the program collapsing into dust behind them, Nathan finally understood the one thing Atlas had guarded from the beginning. Not the bag. The way back home.